Digging around the crates today, looking through my old work, I stumbled upon a story that never quite made it past the, gee, it would be cool if I could pull this off stage. As I read the incomplete draft, I was surprised by how clean and seemingly effortless it was, though I remember doing a ton of revisions. The story was based on an historical event in British and Chinese history from 1784 called the Lady Hughes Affair. I titled my version The Gunner Story, but honestly, the Lady Hughes Affair is a better title. The draft has gaps, and it was barely a complete movement in my thesis, but it illustrates a point about inspiration in the writer's process. I'll read the first sequence into the record, then we can talk about where this thing came from. So here's the opening to The Gunner Story from many, many years ago. The Lady Hughes was named after the wife of Lord Percival Hughes, a Lady Rigambottom Hughes, whose friends called her Riggy, a notorious seeker of love, stable boys preferred, Latin ones if they could be found. Percy amassed great wealth in shipping, so when he invested a tactful sum in the East India Trading Company, Riggy begged him to name a ship after her. He refused, reportedly suggesting she, quote, retire to her stables and name a horse instead. But Riggy Hughes had overcome her country looks and landed herself a profitable marriage. She was used to working hard at getting important things. The matron of the house, Percy's mother, refused to even hang Riggy's portrait, scandal, and left it propped up behind a rack of wine in the cellar, trapping dust. This is why Riggy bribed, threatened, or seduced each admiral of the East India Company, for she was utterly convinced that her one road to immortality lay along the smooth curves of a trading vessel, her name in bright white paint. It was mere chance that some years later, Riggy's obituary would lay open on the desk of a Vice Admiral Roos, or perhaps it was fate, for the admiral had just been promoted that evening, his cheeks flush with champagne, and had donated a ship to sweeten his chances. Percy had even sponsored him, but was not consulted by the East India Company, which considered it an offense of the registry to christen two ships named White Slipper. The choice was made, and Percy was livid, but Riggy, in death, got her ship. The Lady Hughes was a schooner, 3 sails stretched wide in the wind, the fastest merchant ship of her day. She had been tramping the Mediterranean for 6 years, becoming well acquainted with exotic ports like Genoa and Venice, when word came down that she was bound for China, laden with opium from India, returning with spools of spun gold lace. The Lady Hughes, running far below the waterline, had the unfortunate ownership of 8 cannon, 4 port, 4 starboard, and no dearth of shot. The captain, invigorated by the fresh salt air and clean blue of the Cantonese sky, decided to celebrate the ship's first voyage to China with a salute. After all, he thought, there are 3 magistrates on the beach. They might enjoy it. The Lady Hughes let slip a joyous clap of shot into the Pearl River, 4 clouds of dusty smoke floating gently up the sails. In the distance, the 3 magistrates were on their backs. An inquiry followed shortly after the second magistrate had died. Chinese officials were furious and demanded that the gunner be turned over for immediate justice, a swift execution. Chiang Xia, port cargomaster, after much diplomatic dancing, asked the captain point blank, "Do you have the gunner?" The captain held a great brass horn to his ear. "Barnacle," he said, squinting. "Oh, yes, we have plenty. They run below the waterline, crusting up the anchor. Nasty things, really, so I get the men scraping them off time to time. Hard work, and I guarantee my gunner, if he's ever found, will be scraping barnacles for the next 10 years to repay the debt to you Chinese." Despite the cargomaster's curses, the captain stood mute, a stupid smile beneath his white mustache, knowing precisely where the gunner lay, tucked away in the belly of the Lady Hughes, below the waterline, among 87 chests of opium. Riggy was not unaware of the power of scandal. She was constantly attached to all sorts of trouble. Once she allowed a Spanish houseboy to rub her neck in the parlor while her guests waited in the foyer. There was white powder on the boy's hands, red streaks along Riggy's neck and shoulders, and a healthy flush in Riggy's cheeks. The guests, one by one, left tea exceedingly early. Only Eleanor Philcock stayed, a young lady of considerable charm and influence, unmarried at that time. Eleanor was renowned in the social circles for behaving with perfect diplomacy and, dare it be spoken, the utmost grace. Eleanor was perfect in womanly crises. She removed spots from white dresses at influential picnics while still carrying her weight in gossip, and once had the unfortunate incident of a girl, no more than 12, vomiting on her blue velvet dress just seconds before entering the winter gala at the Cheshire estate. Swiftly, Eleanor scraped her gown, sent the girl away with her uncle to a nearby doctor, and dousing a pitcher of water on the rest of her skirt, claimed a clumsy driver had splashed her with mud. Those who hear that story are impressed with her resource. But those who know the real story, that the whole episode was orchestrated by Eleanor to undress in the estate's adjoining rooms where the Cheshire's head footman lay waiting, they are equal parts disgusted and intrigued. Riggy knew. Eleanor and Riggy were real friends. Therefore, it was not surprising that Riggy's breath was hot in Eleanor's ear as she whispered she was in love with that boy, that she would not live without him, and they would elope the next day. Eleanor looked up from her golden tea, smiling wickedly. The girls drew up escape plans for that very night. The inspiration for this piece was an international incident where an illegal salute was fired from a vessel, striking some fishermen in a boat, and resulting in the surrender of the gunner, who was summarily executed to preserve opium trading rights for Britain. The setup was fascinating, but as soon as I started writing, I found myself wondering, who is the actual Lady Hughes? Rather than research it, I decided to just make it up whole cloth. My version of her was a social misfit, where her money by marriage entitled her to privilege, but her upbringing and her passionate, unpretentious personality made her an oddity and social outcast in this stuffy, stick-up-your-bum society. The framing of the opening sequence is interesting. The story feels like it is a movie told in quick cuts and montage. There is very little dialogue, precious little lingering, and everything seems prim and proper, but is really told fast and loose. My goal was to lean into the unreliable narrator, who is an unnamed socialite, who is privy to the courtly secrets that fuel the story. I especially liked the parallel stories of the Lady Hughes incident, side by side with the backstory of the ship's namesake. Both stories were intended to be tragic, yet both stories were relayed with a stylistic lightness, like anecdotes at a summer picnic or over high tea. I'm not a fan of period pieces. I don't have a great affection for this particular time period, so I found myself wondering back then and again now in the present day, why did I write this at all? When you find inspiration, very often the thing that kicks off your story is not, in fact, the thing that you want to write about. It is writing through the inspiration and into the characters when you discover the purpose of the narrative. I was initially intrigued with the gunner, who was murdered by the state merely because he lit the fuse on the cannon. Who knows if he was the only person who lit the fuse, or if, as I suspect, he was merely following orders from his superior. That is where I thought the story would go, and I uncovered drafts of the gunner's confessions in court, sworn statements I had imagined he would have given to those furious magistrates. But in the end, it wasn't the boat or the international intrigue, but rather this made-up woman, this fish out of water, that made the most sense to me. I suppose my advice is this. Anything you find interesting is worth exploring, even if you don't know why. Perhaps especially then. Allow your unconscious mind to do the work of free associating mental images. Be open to the unexpected. That discovery is the juice, the special sauce that makes our effort magical. Maybe I will revisit this story. Maybe I am no longer this writer and couldn't possibly return to it. But as an historical artifact, I am pleased with what it has taught me about myself, especially how it has completely reversed a strong negative opinion I held about the younger me. This one could have been good. Who knows? Maybe it still could be. See you next week. Start writing.